From redstate.com, an article by Stu Cvrk, November 9th, 2020, The Complete Illogic of a Biden Victory. The Biden campaign, the Democrat Party, and the legacy media, all for one, one for all, have summarily declared Joe Biden to have won the election. Furthermore, CBS News claims that Biden broke the popular vote record for presidential candidates. Let us examine some of the illogic that they all refuse to address and see if a few different conclusions can be properly deduced. The logic of voting for Biden. We are expected to believe that more Americans voted for a thoroughly compromised candidate who did not even campaign down the stretch than voted for both Barack Hussein Obama and Hillary Clinton. Does anyone seriously believe that to be the case? Do you think Obama and Hillary themselves actually believe that? Even the media could not hide Biden's serial gaffes and senior moments when he did appear in public during the campaign, nor could they dispel or refute the evidence of massive Biden family corruption in Ukraine, Kazakhstan, China, and elsewhere that was exposed in the last weeks leading up to Election Day. There was zero enthusiasm for Biden, and the paltry numbers at his public campaign appearances paled in comparison to President Trump's massive rallies. Where is the logic that leads to Biden's popular vote record? The Trump turnout. Despite the endless media poll predictions for months to the contrary that were intended to depress and suppress Trump voters, the Election Day turnout in support of President Trump was massive and overwhelming. So far, President Trump's national vote total has exceeded 71 million votes, which is over 8 million more than he received in 2016, as noted by the president himself in a Twitter tweet. 71 million legal votes, the most ever for a sitting president. Donald J. Trump, November 7th, 2020. No sitting U.S. president who increased his vote total by more than 12% over his first election totals has ever failed to have been reelected. Let that fact sink in. And the enthusiasm gap between the two candidates this year was gigantic. The anti-Trump vote, the only thing Biden had going for him, and always limited primarily to the progressive core of the Democrat Party, could not possibly have overcome President Trump's increased turnout numbers, especially given that a large percentage of those Trump voters were Democrats and minorities. And yet, we are supposed to believe that Biden eclipsed President Trump's numbers? From where did Biden's votes come? Biden turnout in swing states. The key swing states in contention include North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Nevada. The turnout in those swing states far exceeded historical norms, another statistical anomaly and a clear indication of ballot harvesting and voter fraud. There are approximately 3.6 million active registered voters in Wisconsin and some 3.3 million, 92%, votes were cast this year compared to an average of 65% over many election cycles. Less than 3 million votes were cast in 2016 by comparison. In Michigan, the numbers are 8.1 million registered voters with 5 million votes cast this year, 68%. By comparison, the 5.5 million votes exceed by over 400,000 the previous Michigan record turnout, while turnout in heavily Democrat Detroit was over 90%. In Pennsylvania, the numbers are 9 million registered voters with 6.7 million votes cast this year, 74%, with turnout in heavily Democrat Philadelphia at 90%. Meanwhile, Pennsylvania turnout in 2016 was 61%. In North Carolina, the numbers are 7.36 million registered voters with 5.49 million votes cast this year, 74.6%. The turnout was 64% in 2016. In Nevada, The numbers are 2.03 million registered voters with 1.3 million votes cast this year. 64% counting still in progress. Turnout in 2016 was 57%. Lack of enthusiasm for Joe Biden could not have accounted for those turnout increases from 2016, but ballot harvesting via mail in ballots could. The legacy media have not investigated or reported on state production of ballots and their distribution, receipt, and certification. All mail in ballots would have been printed by state government agencies or their contractors, and records would be available to determine where and when those ballots were distributed and collected. And we are supposed to logically conclude that a damaged candidate with no constituency or support who did not aggressively campaign for the votes somehow generated these numbers? Consummate illogic. The pause. On election day night at about midnight Eastern Standard Time, President Trump led comfortably in those and other swing states to the degree that the Las Vegas betting odds gave him a 75% chance of being reelected. Approximately 1 hour later, Democrat-controlled North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Nevada paused their vote counting for over 3 hours. Why this was done, seemingly in coordinated fashion, has never been satisfactorily explained nor even investigated by the legacy media. Yet, in each of those states, sufficient votes were magically found that put Biden over the top. A statistical improbability, if not impossibility, that has been glossed over by Democrats and their lickspittle media. These found votes are the real Biden turnout. Down ballot voting versus the top of the ticket. Down ballot Republicans were victorious on election day. Not one Republican representative running for re-election was defeated. And Republicans will add a half dozen more seats to their current totals, including several new women and Hispanic representatives. Pending the runoffs for 2 U.S. Senator seats in Georgia, Republicans will have held on to their U.S. Senate majority, and there were also many Republican victories in statewide and local elections. The Democrats did not flip a single state legislature of all of those they targeted, while the Republicans flipped both houses in New Hampshire. Certainly not the blue wave that the Democrat media complex had predicted throughout all of 2020. No previous U.S. president has ever lost his re-election bid while his party gained seats in the House of Representatives. Yet, we are expected to believe that Biden won at the top of the ticket despite all of these Republican down ballot victories? Please. Even the feckless Lindsey Graham properly attributed the Republican down ballot victories this year to President Trump when he publicly announced his $500,000 donation to the Trump campaign's legal efforts to challenge election procedures in several states. The media declare Biden the winner after shamelessly propping up and covering for the Biden campaign for the past year. The legacy media were champing at the bit to claim Biden was victorious, regardless of the facts. Never mind that many states have not certified Biden as the winner, and the electors in the Electoral College will not vote until the Monday after the second Wednesday in December, which is 14 December this year. Yet, despite many reported election irregularities, a number of important Trump campaign lawsuits in battleground states, and the state certifications still pending, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, and the AP have already declared the election for Biden. The media don't declare winners in US election, as their authoritarian cohorts in communist China do. From communist China's mouthpiece, the China Daily. Stop the steal. The voters make their choices. The states certify those votes, and the Electoral College subsequently elects the President of the United States. The courts and the U.S. Constitution are the enforcers of U.S. election law, not the media. Increasingly, there is a convergence of Chi-Com and American media narratives, particularly regarding President Trump, which should give Americans real pause for concern. And their trumpeting declarations on both sides of the Pacific Ocean that Biden won are both premature and direct evidence of gaslighting regular Americans by conveying a false narrative that the election is over. After witnessing 4 years of media lies in their efforts to get Trump, the logic of believing the media concerning the election results escapes me. What really transpired? All of the above defy logic. None are even considered by commentators in the legacy media. Common sense dictates that the real result of the election was a Trump landslide victory that is in the process of being stolen through ongoing Democrat voter fraud. Yet, all of the above are wished away by Democrats and their media sycophants as they seek to build public pressure for President Trump to concede. Here are considerably different conclusions than the prevailing Democrat media conventional wisdom narrative on what really took place during the 2020 campaign. Biden declared for the Democrat nomination in April 2019, exactly 1 week after Robert Mueller failed to deliver the goods in his special counsel report. One hidden purpose was to hide and deflect public attention from Biden family corruption in Ukraine. The Democrats orchestrated a Super Tuesday quote unquote landslide that enabled the lackluster Biden to defeat the socialist Bernie Sanders. The Democrats nominated an increasingly mentally impaired candidate whom they proceeded to hide from voters throughout the rest of the campaign while screening him from and deflecting all negative stories about Biden family corruption, history of gaffes, girl sniffing, etc. On the plus side, from their viewpoint, those problems meant that Biden was more easily controlled than other candidates would have been. The legacy media propaganda narratives accelerated from that point on, such that some 90% plus media commentary through the president has been anti-Trump. The goal has been to gaslight Trump supporters, separate President Trump from his base, and depress Republican turnout on Election Day. The Chi-Com virus was exploited by the Democrat Party, especially Democrat governors and federal bureaucrats advising President Trump, to destroy his main political strength, the economy, regardless of the damage done to regular Americans. Virus statistics were cynically manipulated and hyped by the Democrat media complex from March through Election Day, virtually stopped now, as part of their scaremongering to convince Americans of the need to keep the economy shut down and also to vote by mail instead of in person. Their vote by mail campaign was, in reality, camouflage for the massive voter fraud evinced on Election Day and thereafter. Pollsters, in truth, nothing more than Democrat activists paid by the legacy media to depress Republican turnout, were even further off in their predictions this year than they were in 2016. Yet, they continually reported double-digit Biden leads throughout the summer and fall, when the reality was the massive Republican turnout on Election Day. In the meantime, while Biden was hiding in his basement and refusing to campaign, President Trump beat the virus in record time and was a political juggernaut down the stretch, finishing out with 3, 4, and finally 5 massive campaign appearances per day. And the voters were watching, including registered Democrats who turned out for those rallies in record numbers. There were unprecedented actions by the legacy media on Election Day night. For example, Fox News refused to call Indiana and Florida for President Trump when it was obvious there was no chance for Biden to win in order to assist the Biden campaign narrative. Fox News also called Arizona for Biden as soon as the polls closed, also to assist Biden. Other states were called by other legacy media early or late, in all cases, to assist the Biden campaign in creating the narrative of an overwhelming Biden victory in process, which was, in reality, a highly coordinated media operation meant to camouflage massive Democrat voter fraud. And that fraud manifested itself in particular during the pause. The Democrats apparently believed their own internal polling and woefully underestimated the turnout for President Trump on Election Day, especially in ostensibly Democrat precincts. Failure of their propaganda and the high turnout for president caused the Democrats to panic bigly as midnight approached on Election Day. Their carefully planned electronic voter fraud gambit failed because many blue precincts went for President Trump bigly this year compared to 2016. Those are the precincts where those new 8 million Trump voters came from this year. Counties like Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach in Florida. At that point, the Democrats realized they didn't have enough votes in the electronic vote counting systems to elect Biden because President Trump was coasting to victory according to vote tabulations in the key swing states. They needed a pause in the counting to find more votes in those states. And this is exactly what they did on Election Day night as they reverted to what they had tried to avoid doing this year: voter fraud through the use of paper ballots. Democrat votes from paper ballots were quote unquote found to put Biden over the top in swing states. These late votes were more than simply statistical anomalies, since the preponderance of votes after midnight on Election Day, most of which were hand-marked ballots, were for Biden. They were part of a desperate, last-minute voter fraud scheme. With the fraudulent ballots putting Biden ahead in several swing states, the legacy media have now declared him to be the winner despite the lack of state certifications and many ongoing legal challenges by the Trump campaign. Meanwhile, President Trump received the largest number of votes of any incumbent in U.S. political history, and we're supposed to believe that it is entirely logical that a damaged candidate who did not even campaign for the job eclipsed President Trump's numbers? Come on, man. At present, the highly coordinated Democrat media narrative is that President Trump should simply concede. The illogic of their arguments stinks to high heaven, as described above, and it will not happen. Watch what transpires when outside audits are conducted in those swing states. The legal challenges have only just begun. Stu Cvrk served 30 years in the U.S. Navy in a variety of active and reserve capacities with considerable operational experience in the Middle East and the Western Pacific. An oceanographer and systems analyst through education and experience, Stu is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, where he received a classical liberal education, which serves as the key foundation for his political commentary. He threads daily on Twitter on a wide range of political, military, foreign policy, government, economics, and world affairs topics.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.